right, good evening, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. We're missing Travis, and Justin should be here in a minute. Sorry I missed Friday. I heard Justin actually put y'all to work. How'd that go?
Oh, yeah.
I'll actually put you up there and put you to work.
Yes.
All right, well, we're going to start with Unit 6, Contingencies, Addenda, and Amendments.
So I got to listen to one of Justin's lectures from the previous class that I haven't taken, and he was actually like drawing stuff.
I saw that one, yeah.
I want to see your art.
You want to see my art? My art is terrible. Terrible, terrible. Our learning objectives for the evening, we're going to identify common contingencies included in sales contracts. We'll state the purpose of using a loan contingency. We'll identify the possible ramifications for an appraisal contingency. We'll explain the use of an approval of homeowner or condominium documents contingency. We'll explain the types of inspections sometimes required or requested by a buyer. We'll identify types of hazardous substances frequently covered in an inspection contingency. We'll discuss the benefits and the risks of allowing a sale of property contingency. We'll describe an amendment and how and when it is used. We'll describe an addendum and how and when it is also used. And there goes Mr. Nobles. All right, contingencies. Before we go into this, I want to pull up the 1 to 4 family real quick and show y'all something.
Justin get the website?
Get it
I don't
fixed?
think.
Are y'all still having trouble getting access?
I know
to
I
everything?
did.
You did? Okay. Anybody else? Are y'all good online? Are y'all able to get access?
Just the quiz 1. The first quiz is the only quiz that I don't have access to.
Just quiz 1?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay.
I haven't tried it yet, but I'll see after class.
All right, I'll make a note and let Justin know. He hasn't told me if they were fixed or anything. So if you're still not getting access, just let us know. So here we got the 1 to 4 family contract, and you'll see in 2A. Now 2A is mostly about just the land. As you can see, the lot, the block, the city, all that stuff, address. And then you go to 2B, and this is the improvements. And this is everything that will convey with the property. Everything in here must convey. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It conveys, unless you put it down here in exclusions. If it's in exclusions, then it will not convey because it's been excluded. But everything in here, equipment, wiring, plumbing, lighting, all that stuff will convey regardless. And that'll come into play later. So I just wanted to show that to you. Y'all will go into more detail next class, contract forms and addenda. All right, now back to the PowerPoint. Okay. So contingencies are anything additional conditions that must be satisfied to have a contract fully enforceable. It creates a voidable contract if the contingencies are rejected or not satisfied. So anything could be contingent. You can have contingency for basically anything. But if some of the elements of the contingency are not satisfied, like it says here, if some of the elements are missing, then the contract is void, like we talked about in an earlier class. But there's multiple types of contingencies that you can have: inspection, financing, sale of property addendum, all kinds of addendums. We'll go into a little bit more detail as well. So the elements. So let's say that I was going to buy your house, Miss Vida. But to buy the house, it is contingent that I get pre-approval. So the action necessary to satisfy the contingency, the action would be pre-approval, because that's contingency. And there is a time frame within which the actions must be performed. And that will be in the contingency as well, agreed upon by the parties. So all these elements must be in there for a contingency to be valid. A time frame, how the contingency may be removed, how is the contingency going to be removed if it's fulfilled or not fulfilled, and who is responsible for the cost of the contingency. So usually how the contingency will be removed is either the qualifications were not met, some of the elements were not met, or the contingency was completed. So say pre-approval was the contingency. If I get pre-approved, contingency is automatically removed because I already did what the contingency was, if that makes sense. So say within 6 months, I have 6 months to get this pre-approval. If I do not get the pre-approval, then the other party, the seller, can actually void the contract.
Would there be like some kind of fee or something that you would have to
There
pay?
could be a fee if it's agreed upon by the parties. If you want to get more into it, if something that they were supposed to do was not done, or if someone is damaged or party is damaged, they can actually sue you to force you to complete it, or just to get their money back for what they were damages they incurred, if that makes sense. Does that answer your question? Okay. So you have to have all these elements, otherwise it's not a contingency. Okay, so here's a couple of the types of contingencies. A mortgage contingency is going to be the most common. You're going to see that all over the place. It protects the buyer's earnest money until the lender commits the mortgage loan funds. Excuse me. And it protects the seller if there is a time limit on the contingency. Upon expiration, the seller can void the contract and put the house back on the market. So like I said, if the contingency is not met, or if it is met, if it's not met, they can void the contract and put it back on the market. Another one is an appraisal contingency. That substantiates the purchase price and ensures that the financing described in the contract is feasible. And there's a loan to value ratio where there's a percentage of the sales price that the lender will allow the buyer to borrow. If you ever get, say I'm going to buy a house, if you're ever going to get financing for it, the financing people, the lenders, are going to require you to get an appraisal contingency, because they want to know what the house is going to be worth. And see if you're going to do like a cash deal. There's no lending, there's none of that involved, so you don't have to have an appraisal contingency. But if you do have one where you're actually getting funding, then they will have to have an appraisal contingency. And how much do you think that you need to put down to actually purchase a house? Does anybody know?
Actually, I think it's 3.5%.
Exactly right. 3.5% is all you got to put down to buy a house. So if I'm buying a house for $100,000, 3.5%, I can buy a house for $3,500.
You say 500?
$3,500.
Oh, okay, I'm gonna say,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, if you could buy a house for $500, it'd be a little different.
Right. That's good.
So the loan to value ratio, all of that just allows to back out of the contract if the property does not appraise for that amount. So if the property doesn't appraise for the amount that y'all put in, you can back out of the contract. And there's a contingency or an addendum, we'll talk about addendums later, that says addendum to terminate due to lender's appraisal. And it just gives the buyer the option to terminate if the house doesn't appraise. So let's say I put in an offer for 293, but the house appraises for 310. Let's say 310. Someone's going to have to make up that difference because we're already under contract for 293. So someone's either going to have to make up that difference or you're going to back out of the contract, which you're probably going to want to back out of the contract at that point. So it just gives them an option or an opportunity to back out of the contract if they need to. But just remember, yeah, anything that requires funding is going to require that they're going to require an appraisal contingency. How we doing, guys? Yeah, it's Monday. I know it's Monday. I've had allergies all day, so it's been a day. We might get a little bit early. All right, everyone good with those? Here's a few more types of contingencies. So if I was going to buy a property, but I wasn't told that there was work done and that there was actually a lien on the property, a title contingency, it just ensures that the purchaser receives clear title to the property. It's just another contingency that you can put in there to make sure you have clear title, and then when you get it, you don't wind up with 3 or 4 liens on your property.
Is that something the title company would handle?
The title company would do that, yes ma'am. They would do a title search as well. But sometimes you would have to put in a title contingency. Let's see. An approval of homeowners and condominium association documents contingency might be required as well. That's going to be if you have a place that has an HOA. Usually you have to pay a yearly amount for that, and it allows you to see if your prices are going to increase. So if I'm going to buy a house and say the HOA fees are $100 a year, and then later on I find out that they're going to up it to like $1,400 a month or something, you're probably going to want to back out of that contract, correct? So it just allows you to see and approve a homeowner's contingency allows you to see if prices are going to go up and if you need to back out and so on. Yeah, so clear title, up to a clear title, contingencies, we got more contingencies. Inspection contingency, that's a big one. So what is an inspection for? Who knows what an inspection is for? Anybody in here, about online? Yes. What is an inspection for, Ms. Shelton?
Just to make sure the buyer knows exactly what they're getting into, just so there's not any, obviously walking through a home, you can't see anything in the attic or anything like that. So having an inspection done just ensures what you're getting into when you're buying the property.
Right, yes, Mr.
It basically lets the bank know what is wrong with the property. If it has,
I'm sorry.
if it has any damages, any foundation issues, any termites, anything, it basically just clarifies and brings it up. And also lets the buyer know that, hey, this is what's going on. If you really want to continue with this contract, you should really know what's up or what's going to be happening to this property.
Right.
It's just basically an insurance for the property itself for future buyers.
Right. And when do inspections normally take place?
Basically, before the contingency is, what is it?
In the option period.
Options contract.
Right.
Yeah.
So inspections will take place during the option period, which in the option period, you are able to terminate for any reason. So it's a good time to have inspections, right? Find something wrong with the house, don't like it, okay, I want to back out. You still have time because you're in your option period. So inspection contingencies, there could be many. There's home inspection. Regulatory inspection may be required by federal law, such as lead-based paint. We've talked about that before. Who remembers the date that you need to have a lead-based paint disclosure? What date before? You all remember?
78.
What?
78.
Right, 78. Now what day?
January 1st.
Correct. You got it. I guess Justin did teach y'all something Friday.
I remember it.
Y'all actually learned something from Justin, huh?
I'm so proud of you.
So yeah, lead-based paint. That could be an inspection that they need done. Termites. That's a big one as well.
And what requires that, Stefan? Do you remember? Like, what type of loan is a termite inspection required?
I believe it is an FHA loan. VA loan?
VA loan.
I thought it was FHA.
VA loans are normally required, some FHAs, but VA for certain.
Okay, so for sure, VA loan, you're gonna require a termite inspection, which we call in the business WDI, not like driving drunk or anything like that. WDI, wood destroying insects. Okay, remember that because you might see that.
Now, how many times, Ms. Speed, I'm gonna ask you, you probably don't know this, how many times does a termite inspection have to be done?
Personally, I would say whenever they go spray your house. Well, they spray my house every 6 months.
Okay, but if you're buying a house,
Oh, okay.
how many times do you have to end up having a WDI inspection? So they're gonna be, the home inspector will come out the first time and point out any spots. You know, sometimes around your shower, or your bathtub, the caulking kind of goes away. Well, if it's not redone, like re-caulked before that inspector comes out, they will trigger that as potential wood destroying insects. So you gotta now go back out there, put that caulking in, and then they have to come back out and re-inspect it. So it has to be twice. So the first one is a pre one, the second one is gonna be to make sure you did it. Now, I've had one before, the inspector went out and looked at the property, flagged all the areas. We fixed them, we thought. Inspector came back out and said, nope, we don't like it. We want you to fix 2 more things. So we had to fix 2 more things. So they came out a third time. Each time they come out, they're charging their normal inspection fee. So they want to come out multiple times because the more they come out, the more money they make. Yeah. So that's why if you get a listing and you're going in a VA or some FHAs, you want to make sure you look around and everything's good, because otherwise your seller's going to have to go fix all those things.
So this is not your inspector. This is somebody that
This
the
is-
VA hired.
This is the buyer's agent has approved or hired a VA approved inspector. So if we're representing seller, say you're representing me as a seller, Sam's representing Ms. Davenport, then in that situation is Sam is going to have a completely different inspector. And the thing is it has to be the same WDI inspector. So if Sam brings out, say, Stefan, okay, and then Stefan can't come back out there, but Travis can, well, guess what? Travis has to do a completely new inspection and then have to do another one again to make sure it's approved. So you end up, you can kind of make a huge mess. So you want to be aware of that termites, because that termite one is a huge one.
It's a big one.
So just FYI for everybody, it's most of the time twice they come out there. That's why when I see a VA loan or certain FHAs, I tell my sellers straight up, hey, just FYI, you might have to do 2 inspections and you're going to have to fix things. So you haven't done a VA though. You did FHA.
So termites is a big one. Another one, well and septic. They could require a well and septic inspection. There's all kinds of septics out there. I mean, there's one that literally it's a septic tank that sprays back out into your yard.
Actually, Mr. Grossman, can Mr. Moreno tell you?
What?
Let me speak that. Let me speak that.
Oh, I'll say my in-laws have that.
That-
But
The
they're out in the
septic
country.
spray.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Mr. Moreno, tell them about your situation, kind of what you were doing at your property, and you were wanting to build 2, and what did the septic guy say when he came out there?
So I built a shop up there for one of my businesses, and then I was trying to build another property in the residential right next to it. And this is under it's a lot that's 0.68 acres. So it's a pretty.
It's not small,
Not
it's not
small.
big, but it's
It's
kind
not
of middle.
big, but it's pretty.
He was wanting to have a shop, and then right next to his shop, kind of like a house. You got your house, and you got your shop. The septic guy came out because it was going to be an aerobotic system, or aerobic system. And so what did they tell you when
They
you
said I
went out there?
cannot build due to the sprayers spraying on the property or spraying on any type of.
Any of the wood or anything. And so he basically cannot now build anything else but that shop on that property. Or he's got to tear it down and rebuild it.
No, I'm still buying another one.
That's what he's got. So you always want to tell your clients that they're going to buy raw land, have a septic person come out, tell you where it's got to go. Otherwise, if you build, you may have to tear it all down and start from scratch. Because they cannot, those sprays cannot be, like you can't have it like a normal watering system out in your front of your house because it's septic.
What? You don't want the kids to go play out in the septic?
Yeah.
Come
That's the
on
thing.
now.
I wanted to go play in the sprinklers, and they're like, "Yeah, you want to go run through poop water?"
Yep.
What?
They're not normal sprinklers, are they?
No, they look like it, but the thing is that they actually are basically, it's a septic system that you don't want to mess with.
And it could change the whole use of the property
Mhm.
because of what took on there before. The septic spraying out. Do you really want your kids running around?
I found out on a property I'm working on right now, a client wanted to buy, it's like a $2 million property, and the lady was wanting to end up put trees, like just basically apple trees and all these different types of stuff, just grow stuff in those areas. She can't even do that. It has to just be raw land. You can't put any kind of food or vegetables, none of that can be in those areas.
I mean, it'll build character in your immune system.
Yeah, you build your immune system, all right.
If they don't kill you.
If it don't kill you.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they still use those things, honestly.
Oh, it's actually newer. It's a newer way of them doing stuff.
That's not newer.
They've changed. I mean, everything's changed up. Everything's constant. Yep.
So they could require that. There's all kinds of different septics. You may need to go get that inspected. There's also underground storage tanks, such as like if, say, a gas station, they used to be in a spot and then they moved out, but they left the tanks underground. Well, over time, those tanks are gonna start corroding and putting stuff into the ground. It's the same thing. You might
It's
have
into your water supply.
it's in your water supply. You might have to go get an inspection because they do that. Sometimes they'll leave a gas tank in the ground or a septic tank in the ground when it don't need to be.
And I want to tell you, oh, go ahead, Ms. Vita.
I was gonna say that's toxic because, like, say Texas gets really hot and that starts to evaporate, and I would think that that would actually cause you health problems because those chemicals are actually evaporating.
Yep, you can. And I'll tell you something else that happened to my parents. So they bought a property, and we didn't find this out until after we moved in. Okay, everything got moved in and all. They ended up in the backyard. They used to have old cars in the back, and this isn't a subdivision. So they used to have cars and all these just parks and everything. Well, what ended up happening was they just took it, dug a hole underneath the shed, dumped all that crap in there, and then put a shed on top. So sometimes things like that can also be problematic. So you never know what the person did before you. So you got to be able to have your inspector
That's
look
why you
around.
do an inspection, yeah.
But doesn't that turn to fossil fuel?
Maybe it's storage down the road. Storage down the road. So
Not my generation.
yeah, exactly.
I remember Justin told me one time about a story. Lady was cooking. She bought a house. Lady was cooking. Water started dripping down on her stove. She was wondering what it was. It turned out the guy before her had tried to fix a hole in the roof with flex tape or flex seal. So it was leaking and caused problems. Sometimes people will try and fix things, but they're not going to do it by the books, are they?
They're gonna do it like Mexicans with duct tape.
Yeah. Little duct tape here, little flex seal there. It's fine. It works.
That's what Mexicans
Right
say.
here, Miss Vita. Right here, Miss Vita.
I see people fix my problem.
That's why he was quiet.
Hey, duct tape fixes
That's what
everything,
he was
right?
doing. We're not gonna get him. What do you work at? Make sure I'm on call you.
I'm not Mexican, but I ain't fixing stuff like that.
Tell me, do you use Vicks to fix yourself?
No.
Because I do.
Vaseline and Vicks.
Oh my God.
And spray.
So you never know what people did before you. That's why you want to get an inspection. Because they could try and fix a hole in the roof with flex tape, stuff like that.
Yeah, you'll see when you do inspections, y'all. I've seen this before myself, where we were at an inspection and I didn't even catch it because I was showing the house. And when you're showing the house, you're focused on the house. You're not looking at everything. Well, they had from the house to the garage, they had ran an extension cord, and so it was plugged through the back door, plugged into kind of like ran under and then plugged here, and it ran it all the way to the garage. They didn't have power in the garage. They were just running it through an extension cord. Well, that's not in compliance because that's not what that extension cord is for. And so you'll see all different types of stuff. when
I
you're doing
remember
inspections.
seeing that. Me and you went to show a property, and a guy had, it looked like his cable box was like going to his neighbor's
Yep.
house.
You'll
It was-
see
it was
all-
literally going to his neighbor's house, and it was just like a little trench in the ground. You could see the cable. I was like, how's he mow his lawn?
You see all different things as an inspector.
People do some crazy stuff. That's why you want to get an inspection.
And that's when you find out most of the time, if you're representing a seller, that's when you find out from your sellers that, oh yeah, I forgot about that fire that happened a couple of while back. I forgot all about that. Yeah, they caught you.
Lightning hit the roof.
Yep, that's,
Lightning hit the roof and caused a little.
yeah, I asked my client, I was like, I need you to complete a seller's disclosure. He went through it, gave it over to him. Inspector came out, inspector's like, well, there was a fire or something upstairs. And he's like, oh yeah, the lightning struck the top of the house.
it's
I
just
forgot
lightning.
about that.
It was just lightning. It just struck the top.
Is that
Yeah.
in my air right?
Yeah, I mean,
They forget, but they get insurance money.
yeah, they forget, but they get the money. Exactly right.
That's fine. So yeah, there can be all kinds of different inspections. Those are some of the main ones that you might see. But yeah, good idea to get an inspection always.
Now, what if, real quick, before you move on, what if, say, for example, McKenna here, she says, I don't want an inspection. So she tells you, I don't want an inspection.
If she doesn't,
And you're the selling agent, and the buyer's agent, she tells you, I don't want an inspection. Then what do you do?
if she doesn't want an inspection, I would recommend her against not getting an inspection. But if that's what she wants to do, there's a form that I can have her fill out that says I waive my rights to an inspection. And if you're getting lending, they're probably not going to be happy with that, are they, Justin?
No, they're not. But I mean, ultimately, talking, like he was asking, he said the bank and all, the bank in the situation, the inspection's for the buyer. It's not for the seller.
So
For
I
the
don't
buyer.
even see it.
Okay, the bank may ask for a copy of the inspection, but you never want to voluntarily give it, and really you don't even want to give it at all. Because what happens is, say McKenna is the lender. I give McKenna the inspection. McKenna's going to see all these repairs. Guess what she's going to come back and do? All of these need to be fixed before we'll fund the loan.
Yep.
So in that situation, neither client's going to want to fix it. So now that whole transaction just did what? It just collapsed it out. Because that's a question on your test, by the way, for everybody. Question on your test is, if lender requires repairs, who's responsible to pay? Nobody. Nobody's responsible. But what will happen is the whole deal most likely will fall apart.
So she would be the buyer or the seller in this scenario?
She'd been the buyer. McKenna would have been the buyer because she's getting the inspections.
And you can decline.
You can decline inspections, yes ma'am. Because what happens is there may be some people, say Sam here, say he knows how to deal with building and all that. I mean, he's built his own deal. He knows what's in it. He knows what to look for. He can look at it, he can see it. He doesn't need an inspection. So to him, why am I going to spend $300, $400, $500 when I know exactly what I'm going to do, or I may have a guy that can just do it for me. So in that situation is, I don't care. I'm just buying the house because I want it. I can fix it if I want to. If you see what I'm saying. So you will get some people that are like that. They'll tell you straight up, I don't want an inspection. You need to still advise them. I highly recommend, like if I was Stephen to McKenna, I'd say, McKenna, I highly recommend, I put an email, I highly recommend you get one, but if you choose not to, here's the form. And then if she prints it off, signs it, sends it back, I have proof that I've told her, she signed it, and my liability is off because I've told her and she refused.
And I actually had a client that wanted to waive that, and we actually sent him with the paper that he needs to sign saying he waives his contingency. We sent him like a little thing that shows why you should get an inspection.
Yep.
And we told him you should probably get an inspection. He didn't exactly waive his right.
He still went, so he chose.
He did it himself.
Yeah, he chose to
Did
go
his
out and do
own
his own
inspection.
inspection. So,
But yeah, with the form, we actually gave him, this is why you should get an inspection. We're just telling you, just to be safe, this is why you should get an inspection, but if you choose not to, go ahead and sign this paper.
now here's one thing I'll tell you. In his situation, he chose not to. So what happens is he asked if he could go out and inspect the property himself. And of course, you're buying it. Come on out. We'll let you see it. So we let him in there. But I told him, I said, if you climb up in those attics and you start going through those rafters and you fall through, you're liable. even if you bag out, you got to fix all that stuff. So it is never advisable for your clients to go and crawl through the attics. There's never a wise idea for them to be crawling around whatsoever. I have had people that have done that before. I had one gentleman, he was probably at least 60, 70 years old, and he was trying to climb up in the attic. And I said, sir, I don't advise you to get up in the attic. I was like, because if he gets up there and he falls, he could kill himself, he could hurt himself, he could damage the property. There's so many things, and liability for me goes through the roof. So you got to be very careful in that, and that's why you never really want your client. Like, I don't mind if a client climbs up in the stairs to look around, and they're on the stair. I'm fine with that, but I do not want them in there walking all around, because in that situation there's such a huge liability, and you may be the best person in the world, and you could trip and fall, if that makes sense. So just
Luckily,
not something that
in
I
my
recommend.
situation, he didn't do that. He did look in the attic, like you said. He just stuck his head up there.
Yeah.
But one of the reasons he waived his right is because it was such a new home. It was like 2018 as well. So it's like, no, it's probably not
You
gonna be
need
too much.
new homes, you still get a lot.
Oh yeah, no, I still say do it, but
Some builders are
he
just.
just waived it. It's like I didn't expect it. So
I'm
You
glad
might
you
get
brought
that.
that up too. There was one that we ended up, not in our company, another company. Guy was telling me, do you remember that one, Steph, when we were at that last inspection with Ryan? And Ryan was talking and all, and they ended up, his client was saying, well, I might as well buy a brand new home. There's no issues with brand new homes. And he told that Ryan, the inspector, told him, said, not true. He said, I just went out to one and the person did not do the support beam correctly, and the entire house needs to be torn down because otherwise that thing could collapse at any point.
if something's not done right, it can cost the whole house. One little mistake when it comes to housing can be a lot of money.
Yeah, it was not done correctly. And then I saw one the other day. A guy was doing his own home makeover deal, and he notched a hole, kind of like a little deal, into a support beam. And when he did that, they were talking about how you're going to fix it and all, and they basically said that entire addition needs to be torn down. Like, it's going to be a mess. So sometimes your homeowners will try to do little modifications, and when they make modifications, it's more of a nightmare than anything. So just FYI, I mean, that's kind of why inspections are such a huge thing, because you need to be aware of them. You really and truthfully need to be aware of those different situations.
You need to know what you're buying, right?
That's right.
Get an inspection, get it done.
Uh-huh.
That house with, the whole house that they tore down.
Mhm.
I know it's like not really on topic, but who actually has to pay for the damages? Somebody has to.
It goes
Wouldn't
back
it
to
be
the
city
builder.
inspector?
It'll go back to the builder. In regards to anything that's wrong with that house, the builder has to fix that house back to the way it's supposed to be, or pay for repairs or anything. So it's normally a warranty.
I think it would be the city inspector because it has to pass inspection.
That could be another place. But most of the time, remember, the city loves immunity.
You don't want the liability.
So most of the time, now I will say around here, College Station is extremely strict. Like, they are strict. But this one, I believe, was on the outskirts. There was no city occupancy, if you see what I'm saying. So in that particular situation, it is what it is.
That's just a tough one.
Mhm. So,
Inspection's a big thing. You'll need to know about it.
and you'll, over time, as you get y'all's license and you're practicing, guys and gals, y'all are gonna have your own stories. You're gonna have your own things. You're gonna see your own
I've been doing this
things.
2 years and I already have some.
I
So.
promise you. I always tell my agents, I'm like, we need to just start a book and just everybody just add into this book, and then eventually we'll sell them. I was like, and then we'll be good to go.
You'd be a
So-
top seller. We wouldn't have to work anymore.
Burn book for homeowners.
Yeah, exactly.
Stephen King's Nobles Realty Group.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay, so here's a few more inspection contingencies. These are the 4 that you're gonna wanna remember, because those 4 will be on the test. You will see those 4. These are inspections for other types of hazardous materials. Asbestos, we've talked about before. It's fine in solid form. You break it open, you got this, when it's in particle form or, that form, it's bad for you. It can kill you. Radon, that's another one. That's gas that comes up from underground. So let's say if they left, like we were saying earlier, the septic tank was left under there or something, it could cause over time it can cause radon to come up, which is a gas. It's a type of gas. I remember seeing radon on the test, so just know these four. Carbon monoxide.
Hold on now.
Oh yeah, radon gas is normally only in the inner cities where stuff was left underground. You're probably not going to see it out in the rural areas. What were you saying, Justin?
I was gonna say, on asbestos, they're gonna ask them also how to remediate those.
Remediate asbestos.
So how exactly do you remediate asbestos? Do you recall?
I don't recall.
Okay,
That's
Can't-
specialist? Or what?
there you go, Ms.
Oh,
Davenport,
okay.
right there.
Specialists?
There has to be a certain person that's certified that they can go out there.
Certified.
They have to go out and they have to do their own inspection or their own removal.
I remember
So don't allow somebody, because they will sometimes say, can the homeowner remove it themselves? Yeah, they can, but they kill themselves, unless they don't have the right equipment.
You gotta be pretty much a hazmat suit for that.
Almost.
You're breaking it off.
Yeah.
It's turning the gas flow.
Yeah.
Radon, you probably won't see that much here. Am I correct?
Depends, it depends.
It's more of like bigger cities. and-
Radon actually is everywhere, it's just the amount of it just depends,
Right.
if you see what I'm saying.
Okay.
Just like soil.
Yeah.
There's many different types of soils.
Yep.
So, anybody know what the main soil here in Bryan College Station is?
The type of soil?
Uh-huh.
Let's say clay.
Brown.
It's brown, but he's saying it back here.
It's dirt.
It's clay. It's clay.
It is a clay.
What's the problem with clay?
Clay don't grow.
What happens with clay?
Moves around, shifts around.
What if water gets into clay?
There's a whole big mess.
So what happens when you build with clay, if it gets a lot of moisture, it'll expand. And if it gets not enough moisture, it contracts.
So true, because I'm like lost in the summer heat.
Do you see sometimes
Yes.
around their house about a crack that big?
Yes. and
What-
me too.
You gotta be very careful, because a lot of people will put those little water deals around the house. You gotta be careful, because if you put too much water, it can shove into the house. So some people will just leave those waters constantly on. That's never a good idea. You wanna get enough water into it where it will just kind of butt up a little bit. It's fine if it's a hairline crack, but you don't wanna put so much where it's pushing up against it. Because when it pushes up against it, you're pushing that foundation, and what happens when you push foundation? Push it up. That causes cracking too. So you gotta be very careful when you're dealing with that.
And
So,
clay is not good for growing crops either.
yeah, clay's horrible, but you wanna, the key thing is you wanna kind of make certain you're watching that. And if you see a lot of cracking, that's normally because of the clay soil. So you gotta kind of look at all those pros and cons. So, but good, go ahead, go for it, sir.
Yeah, so radon is just a gas that comes up from underground. You probably see it in basements is where it tends to collect. We don't have basements here, so you may see it. You may have to deal with an inspection contingency on that, but just be aware of it.
We have creepy white cellars.
Could be wine cellars. Yeah. Good wine cellars. Could be some radon down there.
She's talking about that one that I went and showed with
The
the
haunted house.
Oh,
Uh-huh.
yeah, that one's, I don't know if I'd call that a wine cellar. I'd call that kid from hell or something. I wouldn't want to go in there.
Yeah.
Carbon monoxide, we all know about carbon monoxide. Justin, do you know where it comes from, though? In houses?
I do, but do they?
Do they?
Yeah. Don't ask me.
I'm asking because I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know. Where does it come from?
Where's it come
There's a
from?
couple of different places, like the vehicle whenever you park
Yeah.
inside.
Well, vehicle, yeah, but
Mhm.
But there's a lot of things.
How many of y'all have remote start on your vehicle? No?
No, I can't afford it, no.
Right?
So on my car, I have remote start. Well, what happens when you have remote start on your car, what ends up happening? If it's in a garage is shut, you start a steel, that what's happening, that carbon monoxide's in the deal, and if you don't have the correct type of door in your garage, that stuff comes into your house. So in that situation, is carbon monoxide one way there? What about, how many of y'all have a, heater? But let me ask you this, how many of you have gas stoves? You have a gas stove? Okay, where tick, 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 yep. Well, what happens if you leave it where it's constantly, where it's basically, sometimes with gas, it goes tick, 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 but you can turn it where it keeps just blowing. Well, guess what? There's carbon monoxide through there. That comes from there. What about in regards to not just fireplace, but your heater. Your gas heaters can have those sometimes.
Gas heaters,
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's in the older houses.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, even some new ones have gas still.
Mhm.
Yes, ma'am. So, and if you're my age, Miss Davenport probably knows what I'm talking about. Miss Davenport, you remember on the walls down here where you put the
Yeah.
old heater and that little thing comes?
Little turn.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Sometimes right there, that thing, I remember when I was little, I'd be going playing around and I'd hit it with my leg and it would turn on. And I'd be running around because I'm a little kid. And then my mom would be like, who turned on the gas? You know? Well, you had to turn that off. So because that things like that. Your water heaters, if they're gas, can also give it out. There's many different locations that carbon monoxide can come from.
Okay.
So you got to be very, very careful. And sometimes even gas dryers.
That's right.
Mhm. Old school ones, but some of them have.
Okay, so apparently there's a lot of places carbon monoxide can come in and
Right.
do that. So they may have a contingency where you need to.
Now,
see
what's the problem with carbon monoxide? Can you see it?
that. No, you cannot.
Can
Can't
you
smell it.
can you smell it?
No.
Not always.
So you don't
No,
know.
it's the first couple of seconds and then it.
Yeah.
You know how you can really tell it? Is when you start feeling loopy.
Yeah.
If you start feeling kind of a loopy, you've already got carbon monoxide poisoning.
That's when you have that thing on the wall, right?
Yep, that's why I got that deal on the wall.
Yeah.
It tells you if there's carbon monoxide because it can make you feel kind of like, ooh, like things are spinning
Tipsy.
and you feel tipsy. And in that situation, you need to be looking for gas.
Right.
So,
So
and if
feel
you
like
can
your
walk
drinks are
out of the
just
house, if you get outside the house and you feel like you're getting fresh air, you know that there's gas in the house. So be very careful with that because you don't always know when you got carbon monoxide. So very good point there. So go for it, Mr. Grossman.
And mold, the biggest one. Mold can be toxic. There's all kinds. There's
Not pursuant to my own landlord. There's no
oh,
such
that's
thing.
right.
It's a
Yeah, your own
hoax.
landlord doesn't believe in mold. It doesn't
My
work.
own,
It
my
doesn't
own
exist.
landlord.
Oh, yeah.
There's no such thing as
black
black
mold
mold.
in
It's
there.
all fake. It's all been made up by the government.
It's a conspiracy theory.
That's exactly what he told us. There's no such thing. Even though you can see it, it's not real.
We're not even joking. He didn't believe. He's like, oh, it's not gonna hurt you. It's mold. It's fine. Okay.
It's not the stuff that grows out on the pebbles over there by the street.
No, it's not moss. It's definitely not moss. It's mold. But mold loves like a moist environment. So where do you think in the house that it's gonna start forming?
Bathroom, kitchen.
Bathroom and kitchen, exactly. And sometimes it can require what they say, or what they call mold remediation. You'll need to know about that, mold remediation. Now, do you think removing mold, do you think that's gonna be cheap? It is not, because sometimes they're gonna have to tear down that entire wall and spray it down with this, a chemical that's going to kill the
I
mold.
need to get in that business with
So
it.
if it's on the floor.
If it's on the floor, they may have to tear up the tiles, they may have to tear up the carpet, they may have to tear all that up and spray it down and then redo the whole thing.
So I'll tell you what, a lot of times what happens, older people will think that, well, you can get rid of mold by doing what? Do y'all know?
Airing
Clorox.
it out.
Clorox or airing it out.
Yep, Clorox.
Take
or,
Clorox, just take some Clorox and just spray on there.
It'll kill it.
All right, well, what's the problem, Miss Davenport, if I put Clorox in water? The Clorox, yeah, it's gonna dry, but what did I just do? I still put water on the deal, it's still gonna
You
get
moisten
moist.
it. You moisten it.
The only way that will be fixed is with Windex. That's another Mexican hack.
Windex. That's a new one.
You use that too?
Yeah, so Clorox is not gonna remove the mold. Right.
It can certain types, but it's never a wise idea. I mean, for example, some people have flooding. When Hurricane Harvey came in and flooded downtown Houston,
Oh,
a
yeah.
lot of people thought, well, I'll just spray all my walls down with Clorox.
Nope.
Not a good idea. You're still gonna have mold.
Still adding moisture.
So you have to rip that sheetrock off and re-put it up. It's not like you could just spray it down and call it a day. When you're talking about flooring, I have seen flooring, McKenna, so bad that it had so much mold that it looked like that moss and all, like it was growing up into the flooring. So yeah, I have seen some very nasty stuff over my time. In
Yeah,
this
I
industry.
would like to show y'all some, but
I just can't understand how people can live that way.
It's like hurting
Let
me.
me put it this way, the worst one I've ever saw, I went and showed a house because a guy was wondering why it was so cheap. It was on the, like in between Willis and Montgomery. It's out toward, in like, we're talking rural area.
Okay.
Went out to this rural area and walked in and we were wondering why it was so damn blasted cheap. Like it's a nice trailer house, but it's cheap. Walked in and there was blood stains on the deal. There was a murder in the house.
Oh my goodness.
And they had not cleaned it up yet. But they had it already listed on the market.
There's one of the most common types of mold
Yep.
right there.
Yep.
Black mold.
They have brown mold.
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
window
this is
seals
the
are
black
real
mold right here.
good.
And it collects like that.
No, but like for real, whenever that collects on my window seals, I really do that.
Yeah, and bleach actually is fine.
Oh my God, look at
I feel like
that.
for a certain amount, it
Yes.
should be fine.
That
but
was
then once it
probably,
gets-
that was probably underneath wallpaper and they did not know until they pulled the wallpaper off.
That happens, and I've also actually have seen that before. What happens is people after a hailstorm or whatever, they don't have insurance to fix it. Like we just had a hailstorm here. What they end up doing is they may have something paint or whatever, or they'll have wallpaper, like you said. Well, it comes from the top and it getting all in your roof, your attic, and all that. It's down in the walls. People don't see it because it's behind the paint or behind the wallpaper. And when they start going in to renovate it, they pulling stuff off. And there you go. So
I mean,
never.
There's all kinds. Some are only gonna cause mild allergies.
I was a very bad kid when I was younger. So my mom was.
I don't believe
my
that.
mother.
I don't believe that. is
My
science.
mother will probably tell you when I was younger, I always like water's my thing. I love beaches. I love all that. That's my thing. Well, I would take very long showers just because I like water. So I'd fill up the little. I had a cup, and I'd fill up a little cup, and I'd pull the little. You know how in bathtubs they got that little plastic thing there. Well, I'd pull the plastic thing back, and I'd pour the water down between the plastic thing and the wall. And I would do that just because I wanted to see if it would come out from the bottom. Well, when my mother went in and finally renovated it, it was not pretty back there. We'll just say that much. So you have to make certain that, you know, your kids are going to do things. They're going to do stupid stuff. And that's stuff like that, and it can lead to mold. So if you start getting sick, like I used to as I got older, I got headaches a lot. Well, after we renovated the bathroom, my headaches went away. Because the fact was there was mold right in literally the wall that could join the bathroom and my bedroom. That was the one, and my head was right by that wall, and I always got headaches. And that's basically what it came to, is I was basically inhaling those mold or little protocol or particles or whatever. And so after it was renovated, my headaches went away.
No, no.
So,
I was fine, thankfully. So I used that Windex, so you know.
you already know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, some molds can just give you allergies, and some can lead to cancer and stuff like that. So there's tons of kinds of mold, but just be aware. Mold is a big one, and you will see that one on the test for sure.
So what was the mold remediation methods? Just calling the specialist?
Yeah, usually we call a specialist, and if it's bad enough, they would have to tear down or
They cut it out. They don't tear it down. They just kind of cut it out.
they pull out the wall and then they spray it down and they'll redo it, which isn't cheap. Anything that removes or requires removing walls and stuff is almost expensive.
Just new sheetrock.
Sheetrock, yeah.
Just hire them.
And they don't have to replace the whole sheetrock. So for example, say it's down here at the bottom, they're only going to cut it so far and just take off that bottom part. They're not going to tear off the whole thing. They're just going to tear off that bottom part, put it in there, tape and float it, paint it. And that's all they're going to
That's
do.
what I do this.
That's what I'm saying.
I have his number.
You need his number?
I do, I really do.
You speak Spanish, right? Does he speak Spanish? No?
Hey, don't worry, that's what I'm here for.
Oh, you got it. You got it.
I'm a middle person.
Come on, go after those buyers and sellers. We're going to get into the pathetic market.
There you
man. I'm telling you.
Keep going, Mr. Grossman.
All right, any questions? Just remember these four. Those are important ones to know. All right, more contingencies. Here's a property sale contingency. That's where it's contingent that I need to sell my property before I'm able to buy yours. And I've dealt with that before. It's not
Be
bad.
honest with them.
I would think that it'd be a pain.
It's Yeah, it's not the greatest, and it doesn't give you the greatest purchasing power. If you have a contingency like that, they're gonna, if someone comes along with a, better offer with no contingency, they're probably gonna take it. But yeah, sometimes you will have to say, I can't buy your property until I get mine sold. So you would need a property sale contingency or contingency of sale of property, I think is how it's worded. So the buyers will buy if they can sell their current house, like I said. Sellers might want a kick-out clause, which is a big one. A kick-out clause is where it allows the seller to force the waiver of the contingency, or we go with another offer. So basically it says, say I'm selling my house and then I'm under a contingency contract with kick-out clause. And then someone comes by and says, I'll offer you full price cash right now, 2-day close. With the kick-out clause, the seller in that situation can say, okay, so you have this long to remove the contingency, or we are going with the other offer. So it basically allows the seller a chance to back out if they need to. Usually it's the buyer that's going to be the one backing out, but the kick-out clause will give them that little cushion, in case something, in case they can't waive the contingency.
So let me ask you a question, Mr. Grossman. McKenna is wanting to sell her house.
Okay.
And she wants to buy Miss Vita's house.
Okay.
Okay. Here's a question for you. It's a hot market. So things are staying on the market and going under contract within 3 to 4 days. Comes on the market, 3-4 days, it's under contract.
Yep.
What are you going to tell Mr. McKenna?
What do you mean? Like, what's the situation? Is this a kick-out clause thing?
Well, all contingencies in Texas have a kick-out.
Okay.
So what are you going to tell her? This comes back to your client's issue that you had before.
If she's the buyer,
She's a buyer, and she's selling hers to buy hers.
I'm going to tell her that she should probably get it sold first before she goes start looking. Otherwise, you're probably not going to get a property very easily at all.
Try to put her on the market before she puts in an offer.
Before she puts in an offer, yeah.
She actually would
I'd
probably
rather
want to
have
go all the way through, and rent for maybe 6 months while she's trying to find something.
Yep.
Because here's what happened. Well, tell them what happened. Tell them, don't say use their names, but tell them what happened in your situation.
A client of mine wants to buy a property. They had a contingency. We went through the whole thing. We took forever for him to sell his house because we had already put more offers in with contingencies. And at one point, he's finally like, okay, we need to sell my house before I put in any more offers because we're not getting anywhere. But now they're actually lease backing their property because they sold it to an investor, but they're doing a lease back until they can find a new property, and that'll give them better purchasing power because their contingency is gone. Is that how you want to be?
Well, yeah. I mean, what ended up happening in his particular situation, buyer or seller that was selling and buying ended up, he wanted to sell his property, but he also wanted to put a contingency. So we put a contingency on a house over here while his property was under contract. So 2 houses were under contract. His was under contract and his new house was under contract. Everything was going good with ours, but because we were under contingency, because we were under contingency, that kick-out clause allowed the seller to still go over there in that situation, still market the property. Because if a better offer comes in, like a all-cash offer, they can kick us out and take the all-cash offer. Well, sure enough, what happened, Stephen?
Better offer came in.
All-cash came in, kicked us out. His house is now almost ready to close, and he has no house.
But before they could kick us out, they had to tell us,
Yeah, they have to give you a right to. Go ahead.
They have to give you a certain, time to say you need to remove this contingency. If you don't, we're going to terminate you with the contract.
And they did that,
And
but our
they-
client just did not have the money to pay to buy that house and keep his house. So then we jumped to another house, put it in, and what happened, Mr. Grossman?
Same thing, pretty much. The until we finally.
And then we did it to another house. And what happened? Same thing, kicked us out. And we did it a fourth time. And it kicked out.
And this is my favorite client that you know.
Oh, really?
well about.
Still
Yes.
working with him?
Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
Yeah, it just needs the
Oh,
market
is it
spot.
perfect?
Very complicated, yes.
That's right now, it's really doing well.
So it's been fun. And you will see that if you have to do a contingency by sale, you may see that in your business.
We need to sell our house now.
They need to sell it, I would say, sell your house first. And then finally, later on, he was like, all right, we need to sell my house before we do any more.
Yeah, me and
Told you
Stefan had told him many times, you need to just
Sell your house?
sell yours. I know the investor buying yours, we'll just do a lease back.
You
You'll
just didn't
sell,
want to
you'll
lease.
stay in your house, you just pay rent to this guy, and you got the money in the bank now. So when you put an offer in, you got a solid offer.
Yep.
So, and that's what we've done. And he's leasing right now, and that's what we're
Leasing
gonna
until we
do.
can find some, because the market's nuts right now.
Yep.
I probably put in, since he started leasing, how many contracts have I put in?
Oh, you've done at least 7 or 8.
Yeah, I probably put in 7 or 8 offers. None of them actually went through. All fell through.
When the market goes down.
So if you see that, there's gonna be a kick-out clause. Apparently it's in Texas always.
Every contract.
Every contract with a contingency like that, a kick-out clause. Yeah, so if the seller receives another offer, the original offer has a stated period to move forward with the contract or not. In other words, yeah, remove the contingency or you're out. Makes sense?
Yes, ma'am. Of course you can. What you want?
I don't probably.
I'll get you one.
Hey, she was one of the ones that you got.
Yeah. Do you want water?
All right, so more contingencies. A contingency, you can pretty much have a contingency on anything.
No, I got some. Thank you.
So you can have a contingency on anything, like I said. As long as it has these 3 things. If it has these 3 things, then it can be contingent on anything, pretty much. And that is, what is the contingency? How long will it last? And how will it be resolved? And to be resolved, it's either going to be, they're not going to do what they did in the contingency and it's going to terminate, or they're going to do the contingency and it automatically resolves it. If that makes sense. So if it has these 3 things, then you can have a contract contingent on pretty much anything. All right, amendments. All right, so I want you to write something down if you're taking notes. Write the word amend, and that equals, amend equals to change. And then below that, I want you to write addendum, but instead just write add, or addendum means to include, equals include. So an addendum is going to be to include something into a contract. An amendment is going to be a change to a contract. Now, once both parties have signed a contract, you can't make any changes to it. You can't write on it. You can't do any changes to it at all unless you get an amendment. And I'll pull up the amount of amendments or the types of amendments there are. There's a ton, and you'll probably see many of them in your real estate career. But once both parties have signed, you cannot change the contract. To actually change the contract, you'll need to write an amendment. An amendment changes or modifies to the existing content of a contract. So in other words, like I said, if the contract's done, it's been executed.
Oh, I got a question.
Yes, Ms. Nobles.
Miss Davenport, she went and she filled out a contract and she sent it to you, okay? And you went and you filled it back, you changed some stuff and you sent it back to Miss Davenport. Do you have to do an amendment there? So Miss Davenport sent the contract over
Right.
on an offer on your house
Okay.
that you have listed. And you made some counters, so that needs to be in an amendment, right?
Hasn't done
No.
yet.
There you go, she got the good
Yeah,
deal.
nobody signed, so it's amendment's not needed. We're still under negotiation.
So how do you make changes to a contract as you're negotiating?
As you're negotiating, you'll make a change to a contract, and then you'll have the buyer's or the seller's initial next to said change, and then you send it to the other agent so that the other agent is notified.
There you go.
So let's say if I were to like, if I sign a contract and execute it and set it on my desk, is it executed? No, because the other party has not been told, correct? So once the other party is told and they have received it, then it's executed, and after that point, you need an amendment to change anything on the concrete or on the contract.
So once both people have signed, that's when the other will take place.
Correct. Once both people have signed and it's executed and executed date has been filled, you can't change anything on the contract. It has to be under amendment. And they have amendments for all kinds of stuff. I'll pull it up in a little bit and show y'all. But it must be signed by all parties. Both parties have to sign the amendment or nothing got changed. And amendments to a contract are promulgated by TREC. What does promulgated mean, Ms. Peta?
That is the form that we fill out.
Close. Promulgated means standardized. It's a standard contract. So remember, amend is to change. If you want an amendment, if you want to change something on a contract, and if you want to add something, it's going to be an addendum. Add. It's additional material that is part of the original agreement. And I'm actually going to pull those up here in a sec. All right, let me pull those up. Does this link actually work? I'm scared to click it.
No, that's outdated.
Don't click it.
They changed everything with their new website. It's best to go to their new one.
Justin, are they still, I'm still having a problem getting the quizzes.
Oh, y'all
Yeah,
changed it?
there's still people having trouble getting
Okay.
the.
At the end of class, I'll double check it.
Oh, okay,
At the end of class, we'll look at it.
okay, thank you.
All right, let's go to track. I see contract and addenda. Now here, we can see just a few of the different types of addendums. And this information is available for anybody. If you want to go and see what there is, I'm sure you'll see plenty of it if you get licensed, when you get licensed. But there's all kinds of addendums. There's the one we use almost all the time right here, right, to terminate due to lender's appraisal. It's just an addendum. You can either waive your right, add the right, additional rights. But if an appraisal comes back too low or something, you don't like it, it just gives you the option to terminate. So all of these, now do you think we'll actually use that one here in Bryan College Station? No. What about the propane gas? Will we use that here at the College Station? Possibly. Hydrostatic testing? Possibly. More than likely, actually.
I don't even know what it is. I knew it, but it sounds like.
Hydrostatic testing
Okay,
is a type of testing for your pipings or your water systems, correct, Justin? Underneath your house. Sometimes you might need to get a hydrostatic test. I haven't had to have one done yet, but we can pull it up and look at it if you want to see. Hydrostatic testing. Yeah, this isn't going to tell you anything about it. It's just going to say liable for damages, blah, blah, blah.
What does the static stand for?
Hydrostatic. I guess that
Hydro
means
is
it's
water.
if any water or anything that is not moving, like it
Oh,
should
like
be,
stagnant.
kind of like stagnant, yeah.
Oh,
What about that one? Will we use that one here in Bryan College Station?
I wish, but no.
Yeah, sure would be nice, but no. Probably in South Padre, you'll do that, but not here.
Where'd he go? Okay, just open the wheelchair over there.
we looked at that one previously, addendum for oil and gas reservation. That one's if you want to keep your mineral rights and stuff like that. Regarding fixture leases, residential leases, I had to use that one recently. And this date here, that is the date that the form was promulgated. So that means that was the date that you're actually able to use that form. And they are changed all the time. So luckily we here at Nobles Realty, we have a system that it keeps all the forms updated for us. So if you're just like, oh, I need to go and get a new form or something, you just pull it up. It's already automatically going to be updated. But if there's another, let's see if this one wants. I pulled up one where the other day where the effective date was not the same as on here on the form. Let me see. The 1919, that's going to be the date. So they changed that one as well. The form, that means you cannot use this form. So let's say you print out a bunch of forms ahead of time because you think you're going to use them a bunch. What do you have to do with those forms if the contract got changed? Can you still use them? No, you cannot. All those ones you printed out, and have to toss in the trash because you can't use them anymore. Let's see. And y'all will go actually into detail on these in the next class, contract forms and addenda.
It's the backup contract.
Backup contract, that's an interesting one. I've actually never had to use this myself.
Interesting title.
Yeah, I would have to read through it. I have not used this form before.
Contract terminating.
Contract termination money, option fee. Time is of the essence, remember that's it. You see that in contracts often. It just means you're gonna get it done quick. 12/5/2011. That one's on point. Trick doesn't always update their stuff. Their shit. But yeah, like I said, luckily we have our own system here where I don't have to worry about that. They're automatically updated in the system. All right. That basically covers our content for this evening. Do we have any questions? We're getting out a little bit early.
Well, I just submitted, I was trying to see if I had access to it, please. And I submitted a request for access.
Okay.
So maybe,
That's
is
good.
that why I can't get into it?
You would have to request access and we would have to give you access. Did you ever give him your emails or anything?
Yeah, I just said that I signed in with the email that I gave him for accessibility.
Okay.
And it says, Google Drive to submit a request for access.